this meeting to order. If we can please rise, the invocation will be done by our city manager, Andy Pasmont, and the mayor. The Pledge of Allegiance will be done by Mayor Pro Tem Shelley Sanderson.
Father in heaven, you are most holy and blessed. Generation after generation has commended your works and your mighty acts, as well as shared the stories of your goodness and greatness. We thank you for being a God who is gracious and merciful, slow to anger, and great in loving kindness. We petition you this evening on behalf of all those who put faith in your name and ask that you share your Holy Spirit with those who seek your help and comfort. Help direct our steps so our works prove righteous in your sight. Help our leaders to make the difficult decisions and give them the wisdom to guide this community through the difficult times. Help us to exercise justice and loving kindness, always helping those in need. We ask that you grant your Holy Spirit to guide us each day to walk worthily in your presence, and we thank you, Father, for your loving guidance. May heaven and earth always declare your glory and honor forever. Amen.
Please join with me to the pledge to our flag. Ready? Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam City Clerk, roll call, please.
Mayor Tui.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Sanderson.
Here.
Councilmember Herford.
Here.
Councilmember Sotelo.
Here.
Councilmember Sykes.
Here.
Report out of closed session, Mr. City Attorney.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. The record should reflect that the City Council convened for a special meeting this evening with all 5 members being present. Prior to recessing into closed session, the announcement of the discussion of items that were listed on the agenda was made, and the following is my report. Under Conference with Labor Negotiators, the various employee groups and organizations that are listed on the agenda were discussed with the City Council, as well as the miscellaneous unrepresented management employees. There was no action taken, however, by the City Council, and nothing required to be reported at this time. Under Conference with Real Property Negotiators, the property regarding the Foothill Transit and the assessor's numbers as listed on the agenda, that matter was presented to the City Council. Direction was provided, but there was no final action taken, and there's nothing further to report. Under Conference with Legal Counsel, anticipated litigation, one item was discussed, one potential litigation matter was discussed with respect to action against the Department of Finance and or County of Los Angeles if necessary. Authorization was given to the City Attorney's Office to file a lawsuit if necessary at a future date if attempts to negotiate issues regarding the ROPs with the Department of Finance and the County of Los Angeles prove unsuccessful. And that was unanimous that the successor agency authorized that litigation. Under Conference of Real Property Negotiators for the successor agency, the various properties that are listed on the agenda, again those were presented to the successor agency for discussion. There was no action taken, and there is nothing to report. That concludes my report from closed session. It's appropriate to continue with the open portion meeting at this time.
Thank you very much. Changes to the agenda, Mr. City Manager.
I have no changes to the agenda, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, and we're pulling off the presentation of the food waste program, and I'll come down front. We can have Chris Freeland please come down. The City of West Covina is extremely proud of its parks and recreational programming offered to the residents of West Covina. Our services contribute to the quality of life in our community and help shape a bright future for our youth. To promote the observance of Park and Recreation Month, I encourage you to visit our community centers or the many recreation programs and facilities across our community. Chris, do you have anything else to add?
Certainly, Mr. Mayor. Thank you very much. On behalf of the Community Services Department, we'd just like to express our appreciation to the City Council and to the community for recognizing July as Parks and Recreation Month. As many of you may not know, Community Services is responsible for the programming at all of our city parks, okay, including the Senior Center, the Equestrian Center over at Ridge Riders, Cameron Gymnasium, and some new exciting things will be happening here in the next few weeks. So I got a little cheat sheet here I want to share with you, some upcoming dates. On Thursday, June 28th, so next week, at 3 p.m., we'll be having the dedication of the new playground equipment at Palmview Park. For those of you who don't know, we have a new playground equipment that the City Council approved a few months ago, and we are quite excited to see new playground and fitness equipment being installed there. Now, that does not mean the airplane is going anywhere. The airplane is still there. I know we've received some phone calls, people asking that question, so that is still a keepsake and something that we're very proud of. In addition, as you all know, we have our upcoming 4th of July celebration. And on July the 3rd, so before our 4th of July celebration, I know John Hughes is here somewhere. There's John. The carnival is going to be from 4 to 10 p.m. at Edgewood School. And on the 4th, we start the morning off at 8 a.m. and continue through 11 a.m. with our pancake breakfast. At the conclusion of that, we will have carnival and games going on at the school. From 4 o'clock to 11 o'clock is when we'll have the football stadium open for folks that go ahead and start camping out with our entertainment, which will be provided by Sangria. Sangria goes on at 6 o'clock. They'll continue through 9 p.m. with the fireworks show afterwards. Just a little note, in the past we've had some difficulties with folks trying to get through the admission gates. So we're going to be doing some pre-sailing of our wristbands at the city pool and at the Cameron Gymnasium. Wristbands are only $1 for admission into the festivities, so we encourage you to go there before the July 4th to help you get through the process. On Thursday, July 26th at 2 p.m., we have the dedication of the very new splash pad at Del Norte Park. And I encourage everyone to be out there for that. That's pretty neat. As you go by the park now, you'll see that the concrete's all completely installed. It looks wonderful out there. And then lastly is on August 1st, which is a Wednesday at 4 p.m., back there at Del Norte Park, we'll have the dedication of the city's first dog park, which is named Central Bark, and that begins at 4 p.m. So, Mr. Mayor, thank you very much for all your support.
Thank you, Chris. On behalf of the City Council and the city, we'd like to proclaim Parks and Recreation Month for the month of July. Congratulations. Thank you. If I can have West Covina Fire Engineer Bill Manser, I always mess it up. Come down. Sorry, Bill. Bill's here he's going to make a presentation to talk about curing autism. Bill, I was very fortunate. I was able to attend both events, one at the Lazy Dog Cafe, all food, and the pancake breakfast, so I was at both of those. So why don't you go ahead and talk about your program and everything you guys did.
And thank you for donating so much to the cause. Many of you may know autism affects 1 in 88 people, or actually children, every year. And if you were to take that statistic and add up the people who passed away from both cancer and heart disease, it still wouldn't amount to the people who were affected by autism every year. And we had the very fortunate opportunity. The city was a supporter and participant of a pancake breakfast that we had put together through the West Covina Firefighters Association and Fire Management Association. And we were able to raise $4,218 to be able to donate to TACA. TACA is a nonprofit organization that benefits children and families with autism. And in case you guys might not know, my daughter is 5-year-old and is also autistic. So it was a very near and dear passion for me to be able to raise this money and help other families. And with that, I'd like to introduce Violet Prentice and Mari Nalbandian from TACA. We'd like to present them with the check, and they actually want to talk a little bit and thank everyone who helped us with the pancake breakfast.
Thank you, Bill. And I'm Violet Prentice with Talk About Curing Autism. This is Mari. And basically, efforts like this just really can't be done without an entire community behind them. So we wanted to say thank you really from the organization. There's over 50 families in West Covina alone that rely on TACA's services. And there's 8,500 families in the greater Los Angeles area that rely on TACA. So each of you coming out and helping to support this means a tremendous amount to each of those families. So we wanted to acknowledge, the City of West Covina, the Mayor, Mike Toohey, thank you so much, and the entire City Council, the West Covina Fire Department, the West Covina Firefighters Association, the West Covina Fire Management Association, the Elks Lodge, John Hughes, and of course Bill, because without the one person to be the driving catalyst behind this, these things cannot be such a big success. So thank you to really everybody who helped support us, and thank you on behalf of TAC and all our families.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, I stand corrected on the changes to the agenda. I do have one item I need to add.
Okay.
It requires a vote of the council to place it on the consent calendar, and I'll have the attorney go ahead and address that issue.
No problem.
Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, there is one item that is, I believe, on your dais, which is a resolution to continue the 2011-2012 appropriations. It is a resolution of the City Council of the City of West Covina, California, to continue appropriations consistent with the 2011-2012 fiscal year, City of West Covina Community Development Commission, West Covina Community Services Foundation, Incorporated, and local enforcement agency operating budgets until the adoption of the fiscal year 2012-2013 annual budget. This is a request to be placed on the agenda in as much as it came up after the posting of the agenda, and there's an immediate need to take action this evening. And we need a motion to that effect. And this is merely to add it to the consent agenda.
So moved.
I have a motion.
Second.
Motion and second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, passes 5-0.
And that is now part of your consent agenda as you consider that later on this evening.
Thank you. We're going to drop down to oral communications. Bruce Leinbach and Tracy Moranity. Tracy, you're on deck. You're next.
First of all, I'm from Iowa. We got the Battleship Iowa and Harbor now, so I was come to Southern California. So, first of all, I want to congratulate the City Council of putting Kate.
Speak into it, Bruce, please.
Check the mic.
Pull the mic down some.
Okay. First of all, I want to congratulate the City Council. You voted to bring the cable TV back. But I want to say one thing. I'm very disappointed in the cable TV that was come out. The visibility is blurry, and it seems like all the councilmen are about half the size. Of course, Mr. Toohey, he was a little smaller too. But
everyone else is half the size, and I'm just a little smaller. Okay, Bruce. I know where you live. I know where you live. Okay.
But and also the speakers. Now, you don't have a camera when an audience member comes up here and speaks that you can see the speaker or whatever. See, it doesn't show staff that I can see. But I want to say this. There's another channel TV I looked at today, Slingo Hill City Council. I mean, it's completely opposite of here. You can see all the speakers, all the council people, all the staff. Everybody gets up and speaks about something. It's very visible. It's a very good TV production or internet production. I mean, this here, I mean, face it. I mean, I feel that we rank towards the bottom as far as the visibility and stuff like it. Well, I feel we could have done better. Here we are. We have $375,000 in the kitty. It cannot be touched. Only thing I used before is communications in relation to our cable TV. This is with Charter. It is frozen. I know we took some of those funds to upgrade this internet, but we could have done a lot better. We could have got a lot better production facility, and we produce more. I just feel like we're, for a while, we're about the only city in Southern California over 100,000 that didn't have cable TV or internet TV for their people. Now I feel that, you know, we've got it, but I feel viewability and equality and how it ranks technically, I think we're at the bottom. And I really feel I'm real disheartened about this new TV. I mean, it's a blurred, and I'm real disappointed. And I've talked to a lot of other people who are too. They think that we could have done much better. And the thing that bugs me about this, as far as I know, nobody, I don't know, did we try it? Did we get an input from the community? I mean, like you drive a car, you always want to, when you buy a car, you always want to drive it first. Buy a pair of shoes from, like, say, Herb, you always want to try them on. And I feel this, that we should have investigated that. There should have been a committee that looked into it more, and the council should have looked at it more, and I don't think they should have approved it. You could have come up with a much better alternative, and you ought to ship it back. You get a replacement. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bruce. Tracy, and then we have Jefferson DeRue on deck.
Good evening, council members and mayor. I'm Tracy Moronati. I'm from Alliance to Keep Youth Tobacco Free in West Covina. We are a group of student volunteers, concerned parents, and local organizations that are committed to protecting the youth from illegal access to tobacco. We've been here in the city for 4 years, informing the community about the negative impact of tobacco, not only to children's health, but also the overall image of the city. In 2009, we surveyed West Covina tobacco retailers, and we found that 30% of them were willing to sell cigarettes to minors under 18 of age. The city at the time addressed the issues by adopting tobacco retail licensing ordinance, which is TRL. The policy requires tobacco retailers to secure a license just so the city would be able to monitor them and check if they're strictly not selling tobacco to minors. We admire the council members for the leadership that they displayed for the prioritizing the health of the youth in the city. However, we did another survey in the last year, 2011, just to see if there would be any change in the illegal youth tobacco sale rate in the city. Unfortunately, we found that 29% of local tobacco retailers remained willing to sell tobacco to minors under 18. That's even after the city adoption of tobacco retail licensing ordinance. The situation has not changed. Baldwin Park had their illegal sales rate dropped from 34 to 9%. After the city's adoption of TRL, Pasadena's rate dropped from 20 to 0. What happened? We did our research and investigations. It turned out that the city had a dramatic decrease in illegal sales rate were able to enforce TRL policy. They were able to conduct decoy stings and compliance checking to all the stores up to 4 times in a year. Enforcement entails funding. The city knew that they were going to rely on city budget to substantially implement the checking of tobacco retailers. They rather fund a steady source of funding independent of budget cuts and without taking from the city's already limited resource. These cities passed TRL with a license fee, shouldered by tobacco retailers as a regular part of conducting business. Alcohol stores, gambling places, even pharmacies that sell medicine for a cure need to renew their license for a fee. How much more for stores that sell tobacco, an age-restricted product with numerous health warnings. We encourage the City Council to revisit tobacco retail licensing ordinance that the city adopted in 2010. It is illegal to sell tobacco to minors, and it is unfair business practice for some stores to get away with profiting off children's health. We, the Alliance to Keep Youth Tobacco Free in West Covina, offer ourselves as a resource to City Council. We are more than willing to assist the city in its efforts to protect its youth from illegal access to tobacco. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tracy. Jefferson and Irene Fleck is up on deck. Jefferson.
How you doing, Mr. Dewey?
Pretty good.
Good evening, Council. Mr. Sotelo, despite the way I feel about your appointment, I want to publicly say that I disavow myself from a statement that was made here regarding your worthiness to sit on City Council because of your profession as a plumber. I found that very offensive, and I disavow myself from that statement completely. However, regarding this recall, I want to address it in a general sense. I've sat here the night of the vote, and subsequently I heard Mr. Toohey complain about the cost. The night of the vote, I heard Mr. Herford challenge the residents of West Covina to do the recall. So I'm a little conflicted as to the rationale behind City Council. I also, as a resident, sit back and measure the way it was played out. That billboard was, in fact, put out there before Planning Commission had done its job, thereby undermining the Planning Commission's purpose. It was prejudged, in my opinion. That seems to certainly send the message to the developer that just send us the appeal and we'll rubber stamp it. That was ugly. There were two other occasions that I found the same sort of perception. 3 years and approximately 6 months ago, on the night of election, presidential election, this City Council, at least 3 members of this City Council tonight, were ready to vote for a moratorium on the homes of the residents of West Covina. And because of the turnout and the caliber of individuals that turned out and spoke that night articulately and convincingly and were against that moratorium, those 3 city councils here tonight changed their minds. I respect the fact that they were able to change their minds, but the way that that moratorium was ready to be passed without informing the residents of West Covina, in my opinion, made me very cynical. After that, on another occasion, City Council decided to pass another ordinance, overnight parking. That ordinance, too, was proposed in a rather shady way. The residents weren't informed. It was, I believe there was a special night as well. And as a resident of West Covina, it leaves one feeling a little bit doubtful as to the integrity of council. I really feel that the way this was presented to the residents of West Covina is what's caused individuals or residents to protest and to want to recall certain members of the council. And I do believe it was highly irresponsible of a city council member to provoke the recall on the night of the vote in a way that many found highly suspicious. I'd like to end tonight by, again, at least saying that I personally don't feel that your profession, Mr. Sotelo, by any means disqualifies you from sitting in City Council. I find that a very honorable profession. You probably make much more money than I'll ever make. So by all means, I pray and I hope that God does give you the prudence and helps you to govern our city in a wise way. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jefferson. Irene Fleck and Forrest Wilkins on deck.
Good evening, Irene Fleck from Friends of the Library. We have 2 real important things I wanted to tell you. That the reading program, the summer reading program, SRP, is well underway with many, many people from all age groups. We have babies and children and teens and lots of adults, which is good. One thing that's important about the reading program, they've found in some really very interesting studies that if kids keep reading during the summer, they don't have as big a problem catching up when they go back to school. So we think that that is a side benefit. Also, it's a lot of fun, and they're going to have art and music and all sorts of great things for all levels. The other thing is the petting zoo for the electronic gadgets. That has been met with a lot of fun and a lot of success, and that will continue. That will be a continuing program. And not only is it showing you how to download things, books and things from the library, but it's showing you how to use some of these things. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Irene. Forrest Wilkins and Alfred Williams is on deck.
Good evening. Maybe I could start with recall. Recall the last city council election. Shelley Sanderson at the end invited anybody in the community who wanted to have a conversation with her. She encouraged them to call the city hall. The next day I did, and I placed a call to Councilwoman Sanderson, also placed a call to Councilman Sotelo, and I have heard from both of them. I was wondering if Councilwoman Sanderson's going to call, but I found out she was on vacation, so we had a nice conversation. It was more than 5 minutes. And guess what the conversation was about? Athens. I think I have made the case the numerous times I've approached here the podium and talked about the infinity clause, the evergreen contract that we have. I've talked to several different cities, and what I have found that the ideal trash contract with cities is a 7-year contract with a 3-year extension. So if the, in this case, the trash companies, if they have a contract for 7 years and they're performing at their duties and performing in a pleasing manner to the citizens, then they carry over for another 3 years before they go up to open bid. And as you know, we have a 12-year contract with the Infinity Evergreen contract. I think I presented enough evidence that we should direct the city staff to research that. Councilman Sykes has made that motion, and it fell on deaf ears. But I think that this would be a great time, after having a conversation with the Mayor Pro Tem, that she wants to provide the best avenue so citizens will have the cheapest services available. I think this would be the great time, and Councilman Sotelo could second or even vote. So that would be 3 votes right there that would say, okay, city staff, do your work and see why we have a evergreen clause. If you'd like to ask me a question, I'll be more than happy to answer if anybody has any questions about the evergreen clause. If not, I'll be looking forward. And one other comment. Every time I approach the city council, I've talked about Athens and the evergreen contract. I get people from the community who give me a phone call and say, keep it up, we're for you. So there is a lot of interest. Maybe they don't come up here, but I can tell you there is a lot of interest. And people do not understand, and especially when there was that article in the Tribune about Rosemead. You had Consolidated. They had the contract for 10 years, $19 and change, and they had an open bid contract. They reduced that $19 to $16 and change. That's the same city that Athens submitted a proposal for $16 and change, and we're paying $26 and change. So I think the evidence is there that we should be directing city staff to come forth with a report why we have this evergreen contract. Thank you.
Thank you, Forrest. Alfred Williams and Philip Marino is on deck. Alfred.
Good evening, Council. I'm Alfred Williams. I'm a 30-year-plus resident of West Covina.
You have to pull down the mic, please.
Thank you. Today, I guess, to bring a little history to West Covina and people that may not know it. The day is, if you were born in Texas or Louisiana, Oklahoma, or Kansas, it's called Juneteenth. And it's because black slaves didn't know for 2.5 years after emancipation that they were emancipated, because nobody told them. And this was probably done for a political and economical reason. So as a kid, I remember quite a bit of enjoyment from celebrating this day. And at my age, I also knew some people who were actually born under slavery. Okay? And they say, well, how does this come into with the council? Well, I guess you would say my biggest thing is with this video. And if you notice how this video, most people say it's kind of atrocious. And it kind of brings back also a thing called Gulliver's Travel and Lilliputian. As you know, this was supposed to have been a political satire on the officials, I guess, in England and Europe. But we got a bunch of little people running around. And you also got, if I remember right, when my reading about Lilliputian was that the council elected members not by their qualifications, but how well they could dance, sing, do it. Now, the gentleman was just up and he was apologizing to you, Mr. Sotelo. I'm not going to apologize. I'm telling you, I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about a process. And as a council member, sometimes you got to look at things not as somebody coming up here attacking you, but attacking a process, or what seems to be a process, or what seems to be fact when it may not be fact, but from that perception, it may be fact. So you need to, as a person, I don't think anybody was attacking you because you were a plumber. I think they were attacking because of a process that put you in office. And the video that was put in, it was something, I guess you can say it's something that's better than nothing. And I've said this quite a few times up here, because we've had a few instances where we got something that looked like it was something, but it was so small it didn't really amount to anything. And I think this video is what we have. You had said I could retire, Mr. Tui. I think I'm going to retire when I want to retire, because what you got on this video, as they said, it makes you look 200 pounds lighter. You can't make out any faces, and you know what everybody's back of everybody's head look like. Thank you.
Thank you. I didn't know it made me look 200 pounds lighter, Alfred. I like that. Phil Marino and Carolyn Arndt is on deck. Phil.
Members of the council, staff, and members of the audience. By now, I'm pretty sure you're well aware of the fact that I'm not really big on redevelopment, nor the process by which redevelopment worked in the city of West Covina. This is a San Gabriel Valley Tribune article dated June the 10th, and I should have addressed this question to the Oversight Board, but I'll ask the council in general. It's about the city of Baldwin Park, and it reads, Oversight Board to discuss funding shortage. The city's recently formed Oversight Board for its dissolved redevelopment agency will meet Tuesday to receive an update on the impact of bond payments after it received a $1.9 million shortage of funding from the county this month. According to a staff report, the city's successor redevelopment agency might default on a $1.8 million debt obligation due in August. They're talking about the city of Baldwin Park going to default on a loan. The agency is in the process of contacting its bond trustee to find out if it can use debt reserves to cover the payment according to the report. Last year, the state legislature passed a law that put an end to the state's 400 redevelopment agencies. Redevelopment agencies for decades have siphoned billions of dollars of property taxes into community improvement accounts controlled by cities and counties. Cities are now required to create oversight boards and to send in lists of debt they believe is owed to outside parties. The lists are called ROPS, Recognized Obligation Payment Schedules. However, cities and the state have differing opinions as to what qualifies for payment. The city of West Covina on May 31st received a California Department letter indicating millions of dollars were not approved. I understand that $21 million in a San Gabriel Valley Tribune article, we're not going to get it back. You can argue that any way you want, but that was in the local newspaper. So I have a question for the commissioners, the redevelopment commissioners, who transferred $21 million of my tax dollars from city service funds, funds that should have gone for fire and police, street repair, tree cuttings, things in our community, to the redevelopment agency that was paying them $1,200 a month as redevelopment commissioner. Sounds as though there's a conflict of interest. You're getting paid less money as a city councilman. You're getting paid more as a redevelopment commissioner. So where did your loyalties lie when you gave $21 million to the redevelopment agency? Who recommended it? None of the 3 city council members who are here have a degree in finance, business, or public administration. So on whose advice was $21 million transferred to the redevelopment agency? Because that person should be fired. You got bad advice, and now we're $21 million out. I'd like the 3 people who sit here as commissioners for the redevelopment agency to comment on that. Don't ignore it. You ignore all my questions. Tell me who did it, why they did it, what was the need to transfer $21 million if redevelopment was paying for itself? And now we're not going to get it back. All right? I'd like you both, all 3 of you, to answer that question.
Thank you, Phil. Carolyn Arndt, and then PJ Joyner is on deck.
My name is Carolyn Arndt. I've lived in West Covina since 1957, and I am the chairman of the West Covina Improvement Association doing the recall. As I come to these meetings, I become increasingly aware of the anger and the frustration amongst our citizens. And now we are in the process of raising the awareness of the kind of governance that we have been enduring for many years. It's transparent, it's arrogant, obviously it's ignorance, and when a question was asked last month, that was May, about the building that's being constructed at Eastland, there was denial. Now, all of that is leading to failure. So it is our responsibility now to raise the awareness of the citizens of this West Covina community to know what is going on. And you're not helping one iota when you bring us cable that doesn't tell us anything that is helpful. None of the solutions that you do work. And what it tells us then is that you're over your head. You are not business people, you don't have common sense, and you don't care about us. And so we shall continue with our rallies and our petition gathering and our passing out flyers and information sheets with all of the facts right up until our deadline and beyond, because it's important that the message get out there. The Tribune is not going to publish anything that we send. It's a known fact. They're in your pocket, and we totally understand that. But we're going to work around them, and we are going to do it door to door, and that's what we continue to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Carolyn. PJ Joyner. And Ray Hernandez is on deck. PJ?
Excuse me, I'm very nervous here. I'm requesting an appeal for the decision that the city's attorneys made on the rent control issues. I can prove beyond a reasonable doubt of all the flaws that are made in his decision, and as towards any rent receipts or any, I have so much information here that was never requested. I was never offered the opportunity to present everything. I mean, what am I supposed to do? Fax this and mail this? I mean, this has been going on since 2008. It's not like I'm asking the owner to pay me back any over money that I might have paid over. I'm just trying to help protect our rights and what the ordinance affords for. And there's a lot of people losing their homes because of what the owners are doing. I guess basically that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, PJ. Ray Hernandez and Antoinette Felice. Antoinette?
Just wanted to get your attention. Good evening.
Should we get a chalkboard down there?
Good evening, council members. My commentary tonight will be on the West Covina internet video streaming. Incidentally, I just got an email. We are live and it's broadcasting. First, I want to thank the city council members for supporting bringing back the live coverage of the city council meeting via the internet video streaming. This is a needed, important tool of communication for the residents and community. I also want to give kudos to Chris Freeland over there and his staff for his upstart efforts improving the log-on process on the city homepage to get to the city video streaming, making it user-friendly. So thank you for that effort. And then, however, there's been no media publication, either in the West Covina Discover or the newspaper, that we're online. I think we need to get that out to everybody. With all this said, it's sad to say the broadcast quality is disappointing. With one video camera in a stationary position, video is poor images and dark due to poor lighting and poor camera resolution. I see lights out up here, so that doesn't help. So when you actually look at this, it's dark back here. And that's improved by either improved lighting or a better camera. Improvement is necessary to make this a professional quality broadcast. We can do better. The residents deserve better. I ask this council to look into the dedicated equipment fund for the public broadcasting ability to use these funds to upgrade any or all equipment to bring us to level seen with other Southern California cities. I suggest you log on to www.cityofsignalhill.org and review their video streaming. You'll see the high quality that they have. They have the technology to focus on all speakers and with broadcast quality. I do understand they have more than one broadcast camera to do this, and they are not high definition. The City of West Covina has an outside production company managing this broadcast for the city council meetings, and I'm sure that comes at an additional cost. However, we could recommend volunteers to man extra cameras to eliminate any additional hiring of personnel for this. I know there'd be plenty of volunteers, and I can include myself for this purpose. I'm not suggesting to hire 2 full-time production employees, as in the past with full-time benefits. We can't afford this, obviously. However, let's determine the grading of the broadcasting equipment needs and the manpower needed to operate the equipment. The City of Walnut, for example, uses 1 staff personnel and interns for their live broadcasting, so that's a suggestion. I urge the council to improve the broadcast video streaming efforts for the residents of West Covina and its community. Thank you.
Thank you. Antoinette? And Herb Redholz is on deck. Herb?
I did this to get your attention too. So, my name is Antoinette Felice. I'm program manager for Volunteers of America here in West Covina. And I wanted to come, I actually have to go at 8, but I wanted to make sure that I thank the council for in the past supporting our program with some of the CDBG funding, and just to kind of just update you just on our growth. We grew this year. We moved from, with the help of the City of West Covina, we were able to relocate from I forgot our old address, but we were upstairs because I'm nervous. Glendora, yes, but we were upstairs and it really wasn't conducive to our program, and so we are now at a new facility on 1760 West Cameron. It's really, really great, and I really want to thank the city for their support on that. Michelle was very invaluable to that, as was the the city manager. So I really appreciate that. And in addition, so even though it's not like a whole bunch of money, it really just helped for me to fill in gaps where I needed, even with that transitional move, in terms of some extra staffing support. And so this upcoming year, with some of my program growth, my contracts have limitations on some of the funding and different things for my participants. And so I just plan to use the funding, if it's granted, to just be able to keep a certain service level up in terms of making sure things like transportation, people drive cars and stuff that you usually wouldn't get on a nonprofit. Certain contracts are very restricted in their funding, and so with me expanding my family programming, I also needed to expand some of the service supports, especially transportation being one. And so I have been really looking for support to be able to provide gas cards and just small car registration help for some of my families who desperately need to have their vehicles just because of their family sizes. And I just wanted to kind of let you guys know in advance that if you guys approve it, that's what you'll see on the billing, because that's what I'm going to use it for. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Herb Redholz and Lloyd Johnson is our last speaker. Herb.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members. I'm up here tonight on item number 24, which is the request from the Greater West Covina Business Association for the city to fund the summer concerts. Over the years, I have strongly supported the GWC and their events and their summer concerts, and I fully intend to continue to do that going forward. I do have some concerns and questions that perhaps staff, or I see that Monica is here from GWC, maybe she can address them. First one is I do not think it's a good idea at all to have the concerts here at Civic Center. This is one of the most isolated areas of the city. And to me, the idea to get people out of their house and to get them out to see these shows is to hopefully have some residual spin-off effect for our businesses in the city. I don't know that, the lakes, unfortunately, the last couple of years, there hasn't been a lot of businesses there to spin off to. But I really think we need to make an effort to work with some retail center, perhaps at Amar and Azusa, or someplace where if people show up to see the concerts, perhaps they'll spend some money in our businesses. I don't think this is a good idea here. The other thing that concerns me is that the city, the GWC in the past has funded this and gotten some donations to offset the cost, and now we're looking for the city to fund the entire event. I realize it's through the BIT funds, but it's still money that the city would have to put out. It also concerns me that there is a proposal to share equally 50-50 all revenues generated from vendors and sponsors. Here's where I need some answers. As I read this, at this point, there are no vendors or sponsors. So 50% of what? I mean, I want to support this. I want it to go forward, but I need to have some of these answers made. It also is concerning to me that they indicate that if the city is unable to fund it, that they'll have to cancel the series. Okay, the series starts in 9 days. This seems like a bit of a gun to the head negotiating ploy. I'm just concerned about it. And it indicates in the report that $5,000 was lost last year. So I'm just wondering what, and hopefully I can get the answers, what GWC is going to bring to the party. If the city is funding it, what exactly is their participation, and what 50% is going to be divided 50-50 at this point of what? So these are the kinds of answers I want to get. I mean, if the thing goes on, I will be there and support it like I have every single time. I just would like to get some of these answers so I'll feel better about my decision. Okay?
Thank you very much, Herb. And Lloyd Johnson, our last speaker for the day. Lloyd.
Good evening, Mayor and Council members. I have a question I have to ask, but before I do, there's a couple things I'd like to say. First of all, I wasn't at the last May meeting on the 15th, and there's a reason why. I really care about our city, but one thing I care more about than our city is our veterans. And on that day out there in Ontario, they had almost 1,000 Vietnam veterans show up out there, what they call the Run for the Wall. What they do, they have a big celebration out there on that Tuesday, and then that Wednesday morning, about 400 of them got on their motorcycles and they rode to Washington, D.C. to the Vietnam Veterans Memorial Wall. So that was something that will always come first for me than above everything else. Second statement I'd like to say, I would like to thank, since we didn't have a meeting last month, I would like to thank the Katushi Foundation and its board of directors, which is Councilman Herford and Councilman Turi, for your support for the Memorial Day of veterans. Without you and the funding, we probably wouldn't have it, and I really want to thank you for that. Now, the question I have for tonight, and I hope our city manager will answer this question, and I hope it's okay with this council if he does. In the discovery for June, there was a statement on this letter, the part that says, the City of West Covina's most recent comprehensive annual physical report states the general fund reserve had a balance of $29.6 million for the fiscal year ending June the 30th, 2011. Well, that's fine, but this isn't June 2011. This is June 2012. So my question to him, and I hope it can be answered, as of tonight, how much money, cash, do we have in our reserves? Not counting what the redevelopment agency may owe us that we may never see or we may see. What I would like to have an answer tonight is that how much is in that reserve as of tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Lloyd. Okay. Some of the stuff I can address, some of the things first on Herb's answer. Herb, we funded the summer concert series through the BIT for 35 years through the Chamber of Commerce the exact same way. There was no split in case they got sponsors. They kept the money. We wanted to make sure there was a protection for the taxpayers if they were able to get sponsors that we share in some of the windfall. Otherwise, our cost is what it is, as stated in the report. But for 35 years, and I think the highest single year was approximately $65,000 to $70,000, the Chamber of Commerce charged us to operate the summer concert series for us, and it came out of the BIT funding, and we also funded the Chamber of Commerce total at the highest single year of approximately $560,000. We had the second largest funded Chamber of Commerce in Los Angeles County, outside of the City of Industry. Even the City of Los Angeles, we were greater than back in the day. And that's why I thought it was okay to put in the protection in case they did get sponsors, that it didn't go to them 100%. That we have at least a stopgap measure to get back some of the $12,000 if they were potentially able to get that. And we had the summer concert series here for years. It was here for years, then it moved over to the lakes. Right now, with the lakes being so closed right now as we transition with the new bank that took it over, there has been concerns over the businesses being closed and having everyone there. I think it's better to have them here in the interim until that property is transitioned, okay, on that one issue. There was something else. Some of the loans, Phil, and you and I have disagreed on these when you mentioned the loans, and it's in the ROPS report that the agreements were signed in 1972, 40 years ago. When funding became available, and it says in the ROPS report that we were given upstairs on the litigation thing that we're looking at, but I'm saying it's also what we've produced out there. A number of these agreements date back from the original agreement was signed August 9th of 1971. Then the deal between the city and the redevelopment agency was signed February 28, 1972. I believe the city manager then was either Bob Fast and Leonard Elliott being the assistant city manager, or George Iesa, and I forgot who his assistant was, but no one on the council was present then. A lot of the council members, we had a lot of 20-year council members during that original time when it first started, and I believe it's primarily Bob Bacon, Chet Shear, Herb Tice, Ken Chappelle, were a majority of the people that were around for a lot of the years. 85% of all the funding was done prior to 1990. We have started recovering the interest and the money that was loaned to the redevelopment agency. That has been done over the last 15 years, trying to get the money back and setting a payment schedule. That was not necessarily done at the first, what schedule it would be at. And I understand your concerns, though. The Department of Finance has already had to give clarification that any decision they make is not final by law. It is strictly their opinion. That is being questioned by a number of people, and a lot of the things haven't been turned down outright. They said they need more information for us to produce more documents. The golf course was approved. No funding at this point in time, but the golf course has been approved by the Department of Finance, again, with the caveat that their approval doesn't necessarily mean anything. It's strictly their opinion. And we're waiting for legal legislation. I believe there's legislation currently going in the bill, or the budget bill, that would clarify some of the different loans and properties that we have money loaned on, and whether those will be approved or not. So I believe it is a moving target. The thing Lloyd Johnson talked about, the $21.5 million that was loaned, that's also the same money that's shown up on the books for the last 30 years. It's the same $21 million as a loan, no matter what. It's the same money. It's not that it just started appearing. That money has always been a loan to the redevelopment agency. Mr. City Manager, is there some questions you had? They asked explicitly of you.
Well, there is, but I'd like to add on to a few of the comments you just mentioned regarding redevelopment. One of the reasons, again, that the money was loaned to the agency had to do with the interest earnings. We were generating 10% interest, close to $4 million a year in interest earnings was being accrued by the city's general fund. Those interest earnings were being used to support core city services, which are primarily public safety. The ROPS report that was referenced was approved by the successor agency, which is this council. It was also approved by the oversight board. The DOF, as the council heard, was only given 3 days in the legislation of AB 26 to respond to the 400 agencies throughout the state. So they did, as a result of grabbing different personnel from different parts of the state, denied a number of these requests from many of the cities throughout the state, if not the vast majority of them. They needed more information, which we provided for them. As I informed the council, we do have an appeal that is pending, and that's going to take its own course as we go through that process. Hopefully that answers a little bit more of the process that was involved. Let's see what else here I can answer. As far as the cash balance, as I've mentioned in the Discover, the public can access the comprehensive annual financial report. That is the latest document that's available, even though today is June 30th. The current document has not been prepared, but as far as cash on hand, I'll let Mr. Bachman address that issue. Again, everything we account for is based on general accounting practices and how you're supposed to account for the funds of the city. They're all regulated. So, Mr. Bachman, you want to address the question on cash?
Right. Last year, at June 30th, we had about $5.5 million in cash. We did have quite a bit of receivables outstanding. It takes 1 to 2 months to receive all our revenues for the fiscal year. We had about a little over $8.5 million of available reserves. We're expecting a similar amount this year. Even though we drew down on some of our revenues, during the current fiscal year as a result of a deficit. We did also repay $5 million of the redevelopment loan to the city. To the extent that that is upheld, we'll be about the same position as we were at the end of last year.
And that's the cash portion of the general
That's the
fund
available
reserve.
portion. And again, the cash is going to be a little different because of the timing of receipt of revenues as to when they come in.
If I might add, that's one of the reasons, ever since I've gotten here, we've kind of always distinguished between the cash on hand and the total reserve balance, because a lot of the money is accounts receivable. There is monies that we are currently in litigation on that will probably add to this, and the accountants will have to determine how to book those numbers as well. Those are not currently reflected in the June 30th statements either.
And that's the $12 to $14 million in judgments that we have won.
Correct. And how that'll be addressed, I don't know at this point in time, because it depends on the litigation.
No problem. Mayor Pro Tem Sanderson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, there was a resident that spoke in reference to appeal of rent control issues. I don't know if there's maybe a staff member or Mr. City Manager or Mr. City Attorney.
Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, this matter has actually already been heard by staff with an opinion that's been rendered to the resident. We'll be happy to provide that to the council so that you are updated on this matter.
Okay.
If we need to take another look at it, we will.
Okay, absolutely. All right, thank you for that. And then secondly, I'd just like to respond to some of the comments tonight. Thank you, everybody, for coming tonight and expressing your concerns to the council. That's how we better do our job, is to be here and open and accessible to you if you have any concerns or questions. One of the speakers got up and did talk about our trash company. I agree, and I think we should all make sure we have the best trash rates as possible that we possibly can. So I did actually contact the city manager prior, and we are gathering some information of what we've already done, because we can do that, and then maybe we can go from there, and I would maybe request a meeting with the city manager as well as Mr. Wilkins to go over those issues. Secondly, there was another speaker that talked about the Baldwin Park funding shortage on bonds. There's a really great website, and I hope that many of you that do come up here and talk about the city and the bonds and how we're all going down in flames, read this and go to this website. It's emma.msrb.org. And what that lists is all the city of West Covina's bonds. And let me read one of the bonds and what it says in reference to net reserves and limited liability. These are agreements that the city has on bonds. These are bonds from back in the 80s, I believe. I'll just read. The bonds are special obligations payable from net revenue of the enterprise. In the event of a shortfall in net revenues, the general fund of the city is not liable for payment of the bonds, and the city is not obligated to appropriate funds for the payment of the bonds. So if you guys wanted to do that research, I think it would be really, really great, because so many people come up here and talk about these issues that I think are just being completely out-skewed. As well as we talk about, there was an answer requested, and I think the city manager did give some information. I think we can get that resident an answer in reference to the $21 million that is, we're awaiting AB 1585's decision, which would make sure that we do get the monies. And I believe it's $16 million at this point, because we do had the $5 million transfer. So I think that we can get that answer in full details. Normally, I bring my report with me. Unfortunately, I didn't bring it with me tonight to actually tell you, but it is a big list, and it talks about where all the monies have gone, and that way they can understand that as well. Lastly, there was a speaker that talked about the building construction at Westfield and that we are in denial. I don't want to be sued. I don't think anybody on this council or on the staff wants the citizens to be subjected to a lawsuit, and I think that was made very clear at the last meeting when that was discussed. And lastly, I want to answer a question that a speaker said, I don't care about the community. I do, and that's why I ran for council. I'm always open for anybody to give me a call, a conversation. We're here to help and work. Like a resident had brought up the comment about the overnight parking. I actually wasn't at that meeting. I was in the hospital. But I know I was at previous meetings, and we voted no because we listened to you. The Shadow Park issue, we try and listen to you. We try and work with you the best that we can. And again, anybody is welcome to call me, and we're here to try and make a difference. Because one thing I think we all need to keep in mind is we all live in West Covina. We all live in this city, and I want the very best for this community because, you know, my family lives here. My children go to school here, as well as your children, grandchildren. This is an important community to us, and we are up here to do our very, very best. And again, if anybody has any questions, I'd be more than glad to take calls or meet with any resident. Thank you.
Do we have any other comments? Councilmember Sykes.
Thank you, Mayor Tui. Just so that we're perfectly clear regarding the evergreen factor in our trash contract clause, the majority of the City Council 4-1 voted in about 2007 to have Athens in such a great position, and rest assured that in order to facilitate the drawback from the evergreen clause, it will take the majority of the City Council. Not one, not two, it's going to take 3 minimum. The majority of the council is going to be required to do something. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other comments?
Mr. Mayor, let me just respond to Mr. Marino. I think, Mr. Tui, you've answered the question quite well. Most of the debt incurred by the redevelopment agency was incurred long before any of us were even on the council, over 85%. The Department of Finance is not the final word on what happens in the city of West Covina. If we have to litigate, we will litigate, but it hopefully will be resolved before that. This State Assembly passed a bill, Assembly Bill 1585, that basically said that a loan between the city and an agency should be honored, and the Senate was to take up that bill. Now we understand that they're going to do a companion bill with the budget maybe that will clean up that language too. So hopefully we'll have some resolution on that. And then I want to say about the SIRE, I personally haven't looked on the internet to see the SIRE coverage. I'll take a look at it. I assumed it was the same picture we get here, which seems adequate to me, but if it's not, maybe we can talk to the vendor and see if they can improve the quality, because obviously there must be a problem there. But and then just overall, the residents of the city of West Covina, you know, I don't think anybody up here is arrogant. I don't go around town acting like I'm high and mighty. I know that some of the people that come up here make some statements, and I want the residents to understand, just because you don't come to a council meeting, just because you know, you maybe see me in the market and you talk to me or you write me a letter, your voice is heard just as much as everybody else. I've lived in this city all my life almost, and went to high school here, grade school, elementary school, junior high. And, you know, I think I know West Covina pretty well. That's not arrogance. That's just why I ran for city council, because I love the city and I want to serve it. I've done it for 22 years. You know, the government has changed in 22 years. The respect that council members had, and this goes for every city in Southern California and probably the entire state of California, the respect that council members are afforded is not conducive to council meetings, because council meetings are whatever you want to say. And so when residents at home sit and watch this on TV or listen to it, you may hear one side, and the other people that are totally happy with their neighborhood and the services that the city provides, I want you to know that I represent you too, and that's where I draw a lot of my strength from, being on the city council.
Thank you. Councilmember Sotelo.
I'd like to echo what Councilman Herford said. I would like to look into the video. Like Steve said, we see it right in front of us. And
that is the same thing that's being shared. So.
Okay. And okay. If we could just check into it, I appreciate it very much.
And the last thing I want to say, Jefferson, I've known you for a lot of years, and I don't know no different at any level of government. I know you used to be a county employee. I believe you're retired. You may not be, but I'm saying, okay, you're not. Sorry, Jefferson. I went to some retirement party. I know it wasn't yours, but no different than the County of Los Angeles. We can't take a position on an item. So when you say we switched our vote, the item is presented to us in the report, and then we vote after hearing public testimony. So sometimes when you say items, you switch your vote when people showed up. That was the first time we heard the items. So that's how city councils work in general. That's how the County of Los Angeles works. Someone or the county CAO may put something on the agenda. It doesn't mean the 5 supervisors agree with it. It's on the agenda to be debated, and that's what we do here. Someone mentioned Baldwin Park. We happen to have Mayor Pro Tem Susan Rubio in the audience, and they also are struggling with a $19 million that's a question if that loan's going to be paid back or not. No different. We're all in this. City of El Monte has a $76 million question if they're going to get paid back their loan. And every city of industries, $300, $400 million. Every city, you go around to different cities, they all have different numbers. Some paid themselves back earlier on, but every city almost in the state has loaned money to their redevelopment agency. That's how they first got started. And the object was just like in our agreements back in 1971 and 72. As the revenue came in, it was supposed to be established to start paying for the different fees. That's how it was established, because at first when you create a redevelopment agency, there is zero money. That's what happened in La Puente. La Puente formed their agency, if you recall, very late, like 6 years ago, so there wasn't a lot of money to do anything, so they're not out as much. It's the older cities that have had more active redevelopment agencies that tend to do that. But I just want to make sure you know, Jefferson, I have known you for a lot of years. We're not, sometimes we agree, sometimes we disagree, or sometimes we agree to disagree. So, but I just want to make sure when items come to us, just like the items on our agenda today, they haven't been heard yet. We're going to take a position on those tonight, but you need to hear that. We had that same discussion. I thought Blanca was here earlier, Vinzer, when a cell phone tower, when someone put in an application, when they put in an application, they're entitled to have a hearing. That's part of the due process law. And you can't make up your decision prior to the item coming to you, because then you have not given that applicant due process, similar to the whole library issue or whatever the building issue, that it was turned down at the Planning Commission, or I forgot how it was voted on, 2-1-1 or tied, whatever the issue was. She has an appeal process that she was allowed to by law that gives certain number of days. She had 10 days to file an appeal. Once that 10 days is up, you had to schedule a hearing by law. The only person who could continue it was not the city council, but the applicant, which she did. But she didn't have to, because she had a legal right to be heard under state law. She continued it till January because people did not like the timing in December. But it was when it was turned down at the Planning Commission, set up that time frame of 10 days to appeal it to the city council, and then you had to hear it. That's just the process. It's like a 45-day process, and wherever it hits, it hits. It's no magic. You know, if it happens to hit on a holiday, it may. That's up to the applicant to be courteous or not to continue it. But thank you very much for everyone's comments. Okay, we'll go to the consent calendar. I know there are some abstentions, so is there any other items people wishing to pull or abstain on the consent calendar?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to abstain from item number 1.
Mr. Mayor?
Okay.
I would not participate on item number 3.
Okay. If there's no other comments from any council member, can I have a motion?
Mr. Mayor, I'll make a motion to approve the consent calendar.
That includes the additional item also.
Absolutely.
Second.
I'll second.
Okay. It's moved in second with the Councilmember Sotelo not participating on item number 1 because he was not on the council then. I believe that was the question. And number 3 is the moratorium on Vanderhoof, repealing it. Mayor Pro Tem Sanderson will not be participating on that or abstaining on that.
Actually not participating.
Not participating. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Passes 5-0. Drop down to public hearings. These matters set for public hearing are for setting the assessment rates for West Covina Landscape Maintenance District numbers 4, 6, and 7. Will the city clerk verify that proper legal notice has been given?
Yes, that's verified.
At this time, I shall open up the public hearings on the West Covina Landscape Maintenance Districts number 4, 6, and 7 fiscal year 2012 through 2013. There will first be the presentation of the staff reports. Then we shall hear comments from the public. Mr. City Manager, who present the staff report.
Mr. Yahtzee will do that report.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor Tui, members of the City Council. Tonight's public hearing is a combined hearing for Maintenance Districts 4, 6, and 7. These districts were created at the request of the original developer in lieu of forming a homeowners association. The funds collected are used to maintain landscaping, irrigation, hardscape, lighting, paseos, and slopes. For the Maintenance Districts 4 and 6, the rates for both of these districts are now capped by Proposition 218 and will not be increased this year. Any future increases would require a majority vote of the property owners. Funds in the districts will be adequate to pay for ongoing maintenance. However, upgrades and repairs may have to be deferred. For Maintenance District 7, staff is recommending a 2% increase to cover ongoing costs of maintenance and improvements. This translates to about 75 cents per month per property. This will keep the reserve balance healthy and will also allow for future repairs or improvements as needed, as well as covering the cash flow. With that, I'll ask if there's any questions.
Does any council member have a question of staff? Seeing none, I have no cards. Madam City Clerk, have we received any written protests, objections, or comments concerning the levying and collection of assessments within the West Covina Landscape Maintenance Districts number 4, 6, and 7?
No comments have been received.
Is there anyone present who wishes to comment on these items? Alfred? Mr. Williams? Please state what district or if it's in general.
I think I'm in 4, if I remember right. I just wanted to make a quick comment, and I had mentioned this to Chris about some of the groups that come up there that drive the car up on the and damage the sidewalk and stuff. This is, you say there's no more maintenance costs. Well, the last 2 weeks I've been out there and I've seen city trucks driving across the park, the areas. And if you got city trucks damaging, and right where you went, it was something that was repaired. Okay, and so I'm saying, you're saying there's going to be no more repairs. You need to have somebody at least talk to your maintenance people and tell them don't be driving your trucks over what you got to repair.
Is there anyone wishing to speak? Yes, John, please. Okay. Mr. Solis.
My name is John Solis, and I've lived in West Covina and Maintenance District number 4 since 1977. I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, Mayor Tui, but I saw the numbers on the internet earlier that the amount collected for Maintenance District 4 was something like $1,040,000. Yet the amount budgeted was like $1,025,000. So the 15,000 decrement, I didn't understand. So that's the only comment I have. And also, I saw something in there about sidewalks being repaired. There's a lot of sidewalks right next to the paseo in my home that are really in need of repair. And I don't know if that's part of the $1,025,000 that's been approved or if that's a separate budget. But I would appreciate that someone look at the sidewalks there just north of Shadow Oak Drive on Rebecca Street. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to speak? Seeing none, I will now close this portion of the public hearing. And the one question I have, and it's a unique one, just Because it operates similar to a homeowners association. Normally, if you wanted additional repairs, you would assess yourself over and above. We're in a quagmire here because it operates as a homeowners association, but the city's somewhat in the middle of it, the collection and the managing of the contracts. And I don't know how we check on the Paseos if we shouldn't drive down the Paseos, how the graffiti contractor is supposed to get there. There's always going to be a risk no matter what we do. And I believe what you're saying is there's a $15,000 surplus. Some of the problems we have, and this came up last council meeting, over our reserves, which some of you are also raising questions of the reserves. We, the city taxpayer, not people in Maintenance District 4, but collectively the entire city, which includes people in Maintenance District 4, must loan money to Maintenance District 4, 6, and 7 to operate until we get the money paid by the County of Los Angeles. So in the interim, the taxpayers of West Covina overall go in a deficit, having to pay for the operation of those districts because they're not operated as a homeowners association where you would self-fund that. So the city fronts the money, and when the county pays us our property tax, we get the money reimbursed back. But a private maintenance district, it's not the general taxpayers of West Covina, even though it's their money fronting. So I know that was brought up last time, that there's a certain number of dollars that are needed to fund some of these districts like this, which the city fronts the money, but they're not really involved in the process. Andy, could you elaborate on that in some of the questions both Mr. Williams and Mr. Solis brought up?
I'm going to have Mr. Yahtzee explain how the monies are used, but I know we need to build up reserves. There's some contingencies. The sidewalk funds are in the budget as if the council approves it tonight. It's already included there. I believe it's $25,000, I believe, and perhaps Mr. Yahtzee, you can clarify that.
I think Mr. Solis and Mr. Williams are saying they may want more money or more sidewalks done. Maybe I misunderstood, but I thought that was the gist of it, that there's a lot of sidewalks that are in repair, and who should we put or front the money? That's what I'm saying. I'm confused. Who would pay for that? Because it's not property owned by the city of West Covina that we're fronting it on. I'll get right to you, sir.
Okay, yeah, I'll try to answer some of those questions. Right now, only the district is funding the sidewalk repairs out of its fund balance. We did have to deny some sidewalk repairs the last fiscal year because there was no funding for it. We were able to slip in $50,000 of miscellaneous repairs this year, so that can be used for some of the repairs to sidewalks and other areas of the Paseos. The cash flow, also the reserves are important both because of the interest earnings and because of the cash flow, and that was something Mayor brought up. Right now we do have a positive cash flow, so we are able to cover our costs because this district, the taxes are only collected twice a year, but we're putting out money all year around. So the cash flow is covered. We do have to drive in those areas. Unfortunately, the sidewalks aren't wide enough to support the vehicles. We do have to get in there. We do have to do some repairs. But if you see something, if you see someone in a truck out there, doing something really stupid and they're not supposed to be there, call me or call the police. Feel free to do that. Also, if you have a specific area that does need it in repair, because we have funding this year, please feel free to contact us or to call me directly.
Thank you. Councilmember Sykes had some questions.
I just have a comment. I have been involved in slip and fall litigation since I've been elected, and that's what comes to mind when Mr. Solis addresses us with the idea of the broken sidewalks. So I do want us to definitely think in mind that an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. So I encourage folks that when we see these broken sidewalk areas, to make sure that we contact the city about that. Thank you.
And I would agree with you, Fred. My question was, if the balance surplus doesn't have it and they haven't voted an increase to themselves, how do we do the funding temporarily, or do you use the general taxpayers' monies to loan it to those districts? And that to me is scary too, because that is for the private benefit of certain members that live within that district. That's not fair to the general taxpayer. It's a quagmire where, and I agree with you on the liability potential. I just don't know how you cure that 100% if they only have $100,000 or $15,000 this year in surplus over and above what we've already dedicated to sidewalk repair. Where does the balance of the money that you're saying to lower the risk of liability come from? And if it's supposed to, if the question is if it's a general taxpayer, is that fair to the taxpayers of West Covina to put their money at risk or loan it interest free? It's a question, Fred. I'm not sure. I like that. That was a good one, Fred. You call that in the business, he passed it. It's back to you, Andy.
I got the ball here. Obviously, we can only live, as with all our districts and our general fund, only within the means that we have. And so to the extent that the monies are allocated for contracts, for utilities, for maintenance of supplies, for insurance, whatever is left after those expenses, that's all we have left to reinvest back into improvements. And to the extent that there are no increases, obviously as costs go up, the amount that we can address goes down.
But if they have a tremendous need, they can do a self.
They can. And I believe a year ago we actually did a vote. I don't recall if it's this district or another district, but we did have a vote on.
And doing increased stuff.
And the answer was, I think, was no on those, that postcard.
Mr. Yasi.
If I could add to that, yeah, there was a vote in 2009-2010 fiscal year from Maintenance District 4 explaining all of these things, and that was voted down at that time. And also, if I could just comment on the sidewalks, we do everything we possible to fix them, so do call us. We may not be able to tear them out and pour brand new sidewalks, but we can grind down and try to eliminate some of the tripping hazards. So that's a cost-effective way of doing it. Doesn't look the best, but we can eliminate those hazards.
No problem. Okay, if there's no other comments, do I have a motion? Or heading to the resolution, I should say?
There's 3 resolutions before you. Resolution number 2012-45, 2012-46, 2012-47. Resolutions of the City Council of the City of West Covina, California, confirming the engineer's report and the assessment contained in that report for landscape maintenance districts number 4, 6, and 7, ordering landscape maintenance, renovation, and replacement and appurtenances to be maintained for fiscal year beginning July 1, 2012.
Motion to approve.
I'll second it.
Second it.
Moved and second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? 5-0. Drop down to our other public hearing, the Community Development Block Grant Program, fiscal year 2012-2013. This matter set for public hearing is the fiscal year 2012-2013 Community Development Block Grant Public Service Project funding. Will the city clerk verify that proper legal notice has been given?
Yes, that's verified.
At this time, I shall open the public hearing on fiscal year 2012-2013 Community Development Block Grant Public Service Project funding. There will first be the presentation of the staff report. Then we shall hear comments from the public. Mr. City Manager, who will present the staff report?
I'll have Mr. McDonald do that staff report, but I do want to emphasize, or at least make sure the public is aware, that this is the second consecutive year of double-digit reductions in funding, and I know that a number of entities rely on the funding, including the city, and so it does ripple through the budget. Mr. McDonald.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. This matter concerns the allocation of fiscal year 2012-2013 CDBG funding for public services. The city receives an annual grant of CDBG funds from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. Funding public services is among the eligible uses of the grant. In the approved 2012-2013 CDBG action plan, the city stated its intent to use the maximum funding allowable by regulation for public services. Staff estimates resources in the amount of $152,446 to be available due to a significant reduction as was mentioned by Mr. Pasmat, in grant funding received from HUD, this is roughly $46,000 or 23% less than is allocated in the current year. Ultimately, 12 service providers were considered. Details of the evaluation process are outlined in the report. Past and proposed performance is summarized in attachment number 1. Funding recommendations are shown in column R of the same attachment, with staff recommendations for applicants number 1 and 1 through 5, as well as recommendations from the Community and Senior Services Commission for applicants numbers 6 through 12. All city-run projects are designated with an asterisk, and narrative descriptions of the applicants are included as attachment number 2. There's no general fund impact resulting from this report. Therefore, staff recommends that the City Council allocate $152,446 in 2012-2013 CDBG funds as outlined in attachment number 1, column R, and authorize the necessary appropriations. That concludes my report.
Is there any questions of staff by City Council? Seeing none, is there anyone who wishes to comment on this item?
Mayor?
Yes.
Just briefly, a few nights ago I got a call about a mother and a daughter that were from Seattle and made their way to the streets of West Covina with their luggage and so forth. And the only type of service that I could find was the for homeless and to help these folks would have been the Volunteers of America. Unfortunately, they were located after hours. But it's extremely sad to see a situation like that, and these services that we're about to fund are extremely important. So with that in mind, let's go forward. Thank you.
Thank you. I believe the police department used to, I'm not sure if they still used to have emergency vouchers available that were part of our funding. I don't know if we still have them present there or only with the coalition, the East San Gabriel Valley Coalition of the Homeless, or who has the hotel vouchers?
I believe they're only with the Coalition for the Homeless.
Okay.
We had used housing funds at one point in time from redevelopment to help with that as well.
The state took that. Okay. No problem. Thank you very much, Fred. Is there any other comments on this item? Do I have a motion?
Mr. Mayor, make a motion to approve.
I second that motion, please.
Moved and second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Passes 5-0. This is public hearing night. Sorry about that, folks. West Covina Citywide Lighting and Maintenance District. This matter set for public hearing is for West Covina Citywide Lighting and Maintenance District. Will the city clerk verify that proper legal notice has been given?
Yes, that's verified.
At this time, I shall open the public hearing on the West Covina Citywide Lighting and Maintenance District. There will first be the presentation of the staff report, and we shall hear comments from the public. Mr. City Manager, who will present the staff report?
Mr. Yotzi will do that report.
Shannon, you're lucky again.
Thank you again, Mayor and members of the City Council. This district funds the street lighting and maintenance and trimming and planting and watering of street trees throughout the city. It was approved by the voters of the city in 1997. The voters at that time approved a 2%, up to 2% cost of living increase for the district. And this year we're recommending that we approve the 2% increase. It represents about 8 cents per month increase for a single-family home. We need to have this increase approved to build up the reserves. They have been depleted, and we're struggling to meet the cash flow and be able to pay our utility bills for the street lighting and maintain the trees properly. So with that, staff recommends approval of the 2% increase as approved by the voters in 1997. And with that, I'll ask if there's any questions.
Does any council member have questions of staff? Seeing none, Madam City Clerk, have we received any written protests, objections, comments concerning the West Covina Citywide Lighting and Maintenance District?
No comments received.
Is there anyone present who wishes to comment on this item? Forrest Wilkins, it's your lucky day.
Mr. Mayor, it's not this item, but the previous item about the homeless. It's my information there is a county-wide number, 211. Anybody that is homeless, if they call 211, they can be provided food and shelter for that evening. I heard about the program. I called about 2 months ago and identified myself as just someone in the community curious and so forth, and I asked them specifically, and they said, anybody that's in need, if they call 211, we will provide food and shelter for them.
Where would they get the voucher from?
Call 211 and they'll help them.
Well, I'm saying it may be in L.A. I don't know where we have county offices.
I told them where I was in the San Gabriel Valley, and they said, we can provide that service for you. I mean, they didn't go in detail, but
No, it's normally the Coalition for the Homeless, the ones we contract with.
Yeah, but 211, so.
Thank you. Okay. Is there anyone wishing to comment on the citywide citywide lighting and maintenance district? Seeing none, I shall now close the public comment portion of this hearing and ask for council member discussion. Or do I have a motion?
Mr. Mayor, I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Moved and second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
5-0. Is that okay? Sorry. I missed that. Our next public hearing, this matter set for public hearing is for authorizing the collection of the annual sewer service charge through the county tax bill and for the setting of the rates. Will the city clerk verify that proper legal notice has been given?
Yes, that's verified.
At this time, I shall open the public hearing of the West Covina Citywide Sewer Service Charge. There will first be the presentation of the staff report, then we shall hear comments from the public. Mr. City Manager, who will present the staff report? Looks like it's Lucky Shannon again?
Lucky Shannon, yes.
Lucky Shannon, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the City Council. Again, the sewer district is a citywide district. It funds the maintenance and operations of the city's sewer system. It also funds compliance with state and federal Clean Water Act provisions. It also funds street sweeping throughout the city and is also needed to build reserves for future sewer replacement upgrades and repairs. It is a restricted fund that can only be used for these purposes. Staff is recommending a 2% increase for this district, which is less than a 9% increase per typical single-family dwelling. This increase will help cover operating costs and keep the fund balance up, helping to cover the cash flow and build future reserves. This item is also recommended to be collected on the tax bill, and that is a requirement of tonight's hearing to approve that. This is the most efficient method of collecting the tax bill. If the city had to collect it independently, it would cost an additional $20,000. So we recommend the approval of the 2% increase and the approval of the collection of this assessment on the tax bill. And with that, I'll ask if there's any questions.
Is there any questions of staff by council members? Councilmember Sotelo.
Yes, I have a question for you. According to your chart, how come we're so low compared to other cities? I mean, it says, you know, for Monroe's at 1222, and we're at 444.
Well, without having a lot of details about the other city, I guess I would just have to say we're efficient. We do need to build up our reserves. That's why we're asking for the increase, and we'll probably be asking for that over the next couple years. We're a little short on covering our cash flow. Our sewer's in decent shape, but we're cammering them, and we're finding problems, and we're repairing them routinely.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, if I might add, I know in the cities I've worked at, the fees may have been a lot higher than this because there was a lot of capital improvements that needed to be done to breaking down sewer lines that were collapsing and had to be replaced as well.
And some things sometimes, Rob, are due to the age of our city. Our system's a little bit newer than some of these others. I mean, City of Covina has a much older system. They're 120-year-old pipes, so they tend to have issues. Mayor Pro Tem Sanderson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Shannon, is some of that responsibility due to the 2% cap increase of Prop 218?
This district is not limited by 2%, but if you go over the 2%, there is a more complicated process, and it's basically a protest vote where you have to send out a notice to every affected party within the city, and that gives them a chance to protest that. And if you get a lot over 50% people protesting it, then the assessment could be turned down. So we do weigh that, and we look at the fund balance, and we look at our needs for each year.
Thanks.
Thank you. Is there any other questions? Madam City Clerk, have we received any written protests, objections, or comments concerning the West Covina citywide sewer service charge?
There's been no comments or protests received.
Is there anyone present who wishes to comment on this item? I shall now close the public comment portion of this hearing and ask for City Council discussion.
Mr. Mayor, I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Moved and second. The one comment I want to make the public still aware of, and it's something that LA County's also looking at separate from this, there's a stormwater legislation that's a potential $150 million bill to the city of West Covina, and every city has these types of liability. They want you to screen every storm drain and treat the water at that source when it goes into the storm drain. It's almost impossible for cities to meet that, and I believe the county is currently looking at potentially doing that hearing to do an assessment outside of us against all the parcels in West Covina, well, not only in West Covina county-wide, but just something for you to look at due to the Regional Water Quality Authority and different things that practices they've taken due to runoff like oil and stuff like that in the storm drain. They want us to treat it at that storm drain, which is, I mean, you need a filter at every storm drain. So, okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Passes 5-0. No more public hearings. We now drop down to City Manager's Office Summer Concert Series funding request for the Greater West Covina Business Association. Is there a staff report?
I could have Mr. Freeland do a report if you wish.
Do we need a report?
I have a question, just on the BIT. As far as what it can be used for, is it strictly related to business improvement, or can it be used for general fund measures too?
I believe there is restrictions to that, but Mr. Freeland, could you?
Just for the public benefit, the BIT was a fee that was collected on business licenses several years ago. Actually, for many, many years, it generated significant revenue for the city. Several years ago, the City Council repealed that tax on businesses, and so there's a little bit of a fund remaining from those fees. Those fees were intended to help market the community and the businesses, and was a major funding source for the Chamber of Commerce and other programs along those lines, including the Summer Concert Series, the Movies in the Park, and other events that had that correlation or a nexus that we could help generate with the businesses. That's one of the things that the partnership with the GWC or the Chamber of Commerce helps us to meet that requirement too.
But part of this recommendation is to fund community services events, which makes me think that you can use it for general fund expenditures. Is that correct?
Again, I'll defer that to the Finance Department for the actual definition of the BIT, but again, if it's in partnerships and we're talking about utilizing for community services purposes, maybe we do like a food truck festival at one of our shopping centers. That'll help bring in business to that center. So that's the type of events that community services would like to utilize those funds for. But Mr. Bachman?
I think we use a nexus with the business component, as was mentioned. I think that's the way you would probably fund it, so you'd have to tie some kind of nexus to it.
Well, I guess the question then, is it a restricted fund or is it a general fund? I think there's got to be a clear-cut answer to that.
Well, there is restrictions, but pretty much how they've described them, that's the purpose of why the tax was collected, many years ago.
Okay.
I mean, there is some discretion within those parameters.
It's a little easier decision if it's restricted, so.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Sanderson.
Thank you, Mr. Tui. I had a question that, in reference to that, if it's restricted, could we get that information? Because if you think about it, if you have police that are working for businesses, I mean, you can't pay police with these restricted funds, but if they're doing something to help business, I mean, I guess that would be something good just to have that information to see. I think that's what maybe where Councilmember Herford was alluding to, is to, you know, where we can get creative in some of the areas that we do need for our malls during the holidays or something. I mean, for police or whatnot. So I would, if it's possible, we can.
I think that's a great question. There is a residual amount of the tax that over the years has been dwindled down. So there's only about $30,000 remaining in the account. Okay. And so with tonight's motion, if it's adopted, it would utilize the majority of those funds. And then we're asking for the balance to be carried over to community services so we can do more programming in the community services department as well.
You're also saying in here, too, that 50% of all revenues generated from those city the concerts would be split. So would that go back into the BIT fund, or would it go back into the general fund? If there was any revenues that you're saying that would be split.
That's correct. Hopefully, there's an incentive here for the GWC to go out there and seek sponsorships, and by doing so, we'll be able to receive some of those funds, and so will the GWC, and the intent is to put it back into the fund where the funds came from. So yes, it would go back into the BIT.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, do we have a motion?
Mr. Mayor, I would like to make a motion to adopt number 1 and number 2, but wait for number 3 for the budget, if that's okay, because I don't have any idea what kind of events we're talking about. But
okay, we have a motion to approve number 1 and 2 portion of it. So
I would second that.
We have a second, and we'll deal with the other one at our upcoming budget study session. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Those opposed, passes 5-0. Transfer of assets of the former redevelopment agency. This is part of the successor agency. Mr. City Manager.
Mr. Chung will help with this report here, but as we've indicated in here that we were trying to identify, at least in the first round of assets held by the former redevelopment agency, properties throughout the city. These particular lots are primarily used as public parking at Eastland, the lakes, Westfield at the mall, and so it is our belief that these particular parcels should be transferred to the parking authority of the city, which is still an active entity. And Mr. Chung can complete the report.
Mr. Chairman, members of the successor agency, this report is to recommend the transfer of assets from the former redevelopment agency to the parking authority of the city of West Covina. Staff has completed extensive research and tried to determine the origination of the acquisition of these projects and properties. What we learned is that there's currently owned 32 properties with the former redevelopment agency, and we're recommending here the transfer of 14 properties to the parking authority. Under the AB 26, it amended certain sections of the law, and one of the sections was Section 34-177. And under this, the successor agency was required to dispose of all assets of the former redevelopment agency as directed by the Oversight Board, provided, however, that the Oversight Board may instead direct the successor agency to transfer ownership of the certain assets pursuant to Section 34181. Under Section 34181, it's very important to look at this language, as it indicates that the Oversight Board shall direct the successor agency to do all the following, and it had various lists, but I'm only going to identify A, which is the disposition of assets of the former redevelopment agency that were funded by tax increment revenues of the dissolved redevelopment agency, provided, however, that the Oversight Board may instead direct the successor agency to transfer ownership of those assets that were constructed and used for government purposes, such as roads, school buildings, parks, and fire stations, to the appropriate government jurisdiction, pursuant to any existing and relating to the construction and use of such assets. Now, what's highlighted in blue is the language about funded by tax increment revenues. So that's very important to distinguish that, as if the redevelopment agency owned properties that were acquired by other funds that were not tax increment revenues, it is arguable that those properties and assets are not required to be transferred under this law. The other component to that is that the green highlight of the government purpose is that essentially that even if the properties were acquired with tax increment revenues, the law specifies that if it's used for government purposes, that can be transferred to the appropriate government body. And that is what we are here doing tonight. The former redevelopment agency owns 32 parcels. That makes up 4 different developments. And we're going to concentrate tonight on the first 3, which is the Eastland Shopping Center, the Lakes Office Development, and the Westfield Mall. Staff will bring back a separate report on the disposition of the West Covina Sportsplex site in the near future. The Eastland Shopping Center, this is an aerial of the shopping center. And this is an overlay of the parcel map, or the assessor's parcel map. And in yellow is what we call Parcel D. Parcel D is approximately 5.83 acres in size. I know it's kind of hard to see it here, but it's, due to the transfer of the file, it didn't come out too well. But essentially, this is all surface parking, driveways, and ingress and egress for the eastern portion of the Eastland Shopping Center. There are deed restrictions on this property that could only be used for public purposes for the benefit of the Eastland Shopping Center and for businesses that service that area and for the general public. And therefore, this is a free public parking for the Eastland Shopping Center. It's encumbered by existing agreements and by reciprocal easement agreement. And there really isn't anything else that the site can be used for but public parking purposes. This is an aerial of the Lakes Office Development. This is the assessor's parcel map that's kind of overlaid, that kind of shows the lines, even though it's kind of hard to see. But in yellow are the 2 parcels that the redevelopment agency or former redevelopment agency owns. These 2 parcels is comprised of 2 parking structures, both on both sides of the site, plus in between there is all surface parking. This site was originally acquired by the West Covina Parking Authorities in the 1970, I believe it's 1973, and it was acquired using certificate of participation bonds, which were refinanced with lease revenue bonds for the Lakes Office Development. Those funds are not tax increment revenues. But however, in addition to not being tax increment revenues, the site itself is used strictly for public parking purposes, for not only for the office development, but for the general public as well. This is the Westfield Plaza Mall, and as you'll see here with the different parcels laid out, the former redevelopment agency owned a lot of different properties in here. And what's important is that it's hard to see, but number 8 is the parking structure, and the rest of it's all surface parking throughout the center. It's interesting to find out that what you see here is the remnants of land acquisition that occurred prior to the development of the mall, and this occurred in the early 70s. And so essentially, it provides for parking for the Westfield Mall as well as for the general public as free parking. These parking facilities are restricted for public parking purposes and can only be used for public parking purposes. In addition to that, there's various agreements with the Westfield, as well as there's a reciprocal easement agreement that restricts the use, and any disposition of this would and may impair that contractual obligations and requirements that we have within those agreements. Staff has recommended the transfer of the 14 parcels to the Parking Authority for the following reasons. The 14 parcels are for free parking purposes, subject to numerous agreements and bond documents relating to the construction and use of such assets. The public parking is a government purpose that has been recognized and accepted as being a government purpose by the Department of Finance. 13 parcels of land at the lakes in Westfield Plaza were originally acquired and developed by the Parking Authority, which using certificate of participation bonds, which is not tax increment revenues, and technically not subject to Section 34181 of the California Health and Safety Code. The city's Parking Authority is the appropriate public jurisdiction to accept these parcels, as the intended purpose is for free parking at the Eastland Shopping Center, the Lakes Office, and Edwards Entertainment Center, as well as the Westfield Mall. Such compliance would be in compliance with both the Section 34177E and 341A of the California Health and Safety Code. And this transfer is consistent with other actions that were taken by other cities. Essentially, those that I know of right now are La Habra and Placentia, in which the Oversight Board and the Department of Finance has approved transfer of parking lots similar to what we have to the city at no cost as a government purpose. One more thing, I do have a change in the resolution that I just need to point out, that on the ninth whereas, where it talks about the transfer of 13 parcels, that should actually be the transfer of 14 parcels. And I just need to make that clarification within that resolution. That concludes my presentation. I can answer any questions you may have.
Does any council member have a question of staff? We're open for debate or comments or
Mr.
motion.
Mayor, I'll make a motion to approve the resolution.
I'll second.
Moved and second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? 5-0. Drop down to Councilmember Fred Sykes' report on utilizing general fund reserves to hire additional police officers. Councilmember Sykes.
Thank you, Mayor Tui. In my neighborhood, since I've been elected, which is a short period of time, we have had an uptick in crime. We've had a serious rash of burglaries back in November, December that the police did address, and it has been, that rash has been quieted, it has been quashed for the most part. The other day, I came across a resident's Visa card, and I contact this resident, and he advised me that not only did he lose that card, but he lost an automobile that card was inside. It was inside that vehicle when it was taken. And I'm also aware that where this gentleman lives, he has a few neighbors that have been adversely affected by the uptick in crime. So needless to say, the difficult folks, to say criminals, see what we see. We do have a shortage of visibility of our police. And I feel that we are at an alarming low situation with the amount of police officers that we have. But when you read through our agenda and you see our budget situation, the fact is we don't have the money to bring forward an increase, in particular in the amount of 10 to 20 police officers. And that is the bottom line. If the other council members have any suggestions as to how we can bring up the count, I'd appreciate it. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Is there any other comments or?
Mr. Mayor, let me just echo some of those comments. I wish we could add more police officers. The guys in our department and the men and women that are out on the street and in the offices, I think, are doing a yeoman's job, just like every employee at City Hall who's doing 110 or 120, 30% more than they used to do. The reality of the world is that unless you have extraordinary revenue, every city's tightened its budget, and this city has. I think we've said over and over again in the last 10 years, or not, I'm sorry, last 5 years, maybe even shorter, we've reduced employees here at City Hall by 100. And that's not necessarily the best way to run a city, but when you're dealt a hand of cards, you got to play them, and that's kind of what we've done here. But I think from what I see and what our departments, fire, police, and our staff here at City Hall, I think they're doing as good as they can. Now, at some point, I mean, we may have to talk about, the future and where we go, and I think that's coming quickly. So I look forward to that discussion, but I just want to acknowledge the great job our department's doing.
Any other? Mayor Pro Tem Sanderson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree and appreciate this coming forward. I reviewed the staff report and just had a few questions, because when we did vote to do this, it wasn't just exclusively the $10 million to hire reserves. I thought we detailed a little bit further, and I kind of wanted information on reserves, or we have a shop program that takes a lot of the responsibilities, that they could handle, and how we might be able to expand on that program just to be able to get additional, bodies. I mean, we may, the report saying we have decreased in the amounts. We still have the same amount of people working on the streets. It's just a lot of the people are doing overtime, et cetera. So I guess that would be my question, Mr. City Manager, or in reference to, how we could better utilize our volunteers or reserve program.
See if the chief wants to take a crack at that.
Well, I mean, I guess
I think we're trying to utilize the resources.
Maybe I could just get that.
We can get back to you on that.
Yeah, you can just, share it with the council or whatever, see if there's other options in expanding that.
Okay.
To try and.
We can do that.
Is there any other? Councilmember Sotelo.
Well, as we all see, we need to find a revenue source. We need to start looking for a revenue source, and we're going to have to start looking hard and create one and look for one, because you're right, we need more police officers, and we need another source. And with all our funds going down and our funds being taken, we as a city and we're going to have to make a decision on what way we want to go. And it's not going to be a decision a lot of people are going to like, but we're going to have to make some kind of decision on how you want to raise funds to get these things done, because we all want to keep what we have today. And then to do that, we're going to have to do some creative thinking. So we'll do that to the staff at a later date, but we're going to have to really look at this. And I agree with you, we need more police officers. But our police officers and firemen are doing a great job right now. But we need to get another revenue source. That's what I think our future of West Covina is right now.
I concur with a lot of what people have said here. Number one, we still have the same amount of people patrolling the streets that we've had, regardless of being down officers. With our constant manning requirements, our needs are being met now. In fairness to the officers, they're also working their butts off, and I understand at some point in time it's a braking system that you can only work so much overtime. That hurts also, but the number of people that are on the streets are the same. To hire one officer 24 hours a day, I believe you need 4.5 officers to do that. And at some point in time, as you get more officers, you need more management overseeing those officers that are on the street. So we have to be careful. If you read the LA Times, I believe it was in today's paper, where the two supervisors had a state of the city out in the San Fernando Valley already since realignment, which the beautiful state gave us that, where they said they cut their budget, which when the state says they cut their budget, they mean they release the prisoners for the local governments to deal with. But that's how they say they saved money. It is already having an impact in the San Fernando Valley. Crime is up 10%. And they, again, view that as a reduction. I have the quote from the state legislature where they said they were able to save $250 million by releasing the prisoners. Well, you still put them somewhere, and now we're having to deal with people that are not supervised. Parolees are not supervised now, and that's being dumped on the cities in the county of Los Angeles and other cities in the state. And that's going to be a problem. A person that already has a history of criminal activity We've already caught them, prosecuted them, convicted them, and then the beautiful state legislature, which we have some former employees or current employees of the state legislature here, gave them back to us. And we want to thank, since we have one of Roger's former or current employees in the audience, we want to thank Assemblyman Roger Hernandez for voting to release those prisoners back in our neighborhood. And that's very unfortunate, because ultimately you, the residents, will pay that price of having those people back released in our neighborhoods, having to deal with them. And it's going to put strains on our police department, having to deal with people that we already are knowing. We already know they're a questionable type character person because we've caught them. And Fred, I don't disagree with you. I just think there's a lot of needs and services out there, and we just got to keep having our people the best trained. There's some minimums we can't go below. I know we just hired someone, I believe, last week or June 13th. I'm sorry. The chief just gave the peace sign. I wasn't sure. He was playing Richard Nixon. But I know we're in the process of replacing some because we have people retiring. But there is a strain on the amount of overtime our men and women work in the police department. We have to be cognizant of that and to watch it. So we all got to pay attention. I think everyone's, based on their comments, they're going to be watching this, and we can look at this in the budget too. So thank you very much. Fred, do we have a motion to receive and file then?
So moved. Second.
Moved and second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Is that 5-0? I didn't hear some other votes. Okay. We go to West Covina Adopt-A Park. Councilmember Sykes, this is your item again.
I brought this up because the lack of upkeep and maintenance that's been caused by the shrinking of our staff, it affects the value of the property that are neighboring the parks that are being defaced and destroyed, and not to mention what it does to depress the quality of life when you go to a park and it's defaced and unkempt. So we have models from other cities in the volunteer programs, such as I mentioned Glendora, and I'm hoping that the staff can bring forth how these other communities are dealing with the same situation that we have. We have parks that are being under-maintained, and we have folks that do step up. We have the Latter-day Saints, they were given an award, and I'm hoping we can get other such type community groups and businesses to step forward, and I think the city can use the Glendora as a model that we can use to set up guidelines to how we can implement this program to get every park somewhat supported, get support from the community. Thank you.
Are you going to make that a motion, Fred?
That's my motion.
Thank you. Okay, Mayor Pro Tem Sanderson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would second that motion, and I want to continue to say that I, having children, go to the parks quite often. And I want to actually give our staff, on the limited amount of time they do have and how many parks we do have, they do a wonderful job. I know when a tree branch falls or those type of things, they're on it. And I do think our parks are some of the most beautiful parks. I'm really, really proud. However, I think any additional help would be fantastic, and I support that. And I like the idea when Councilmember brought this up about the Adopt-A-Park program. I think it's a great idea. Being at the park over the weekend, one of the things that people need to do, keep an eye on your children, because, for example, I was at a park and these kids were running around not supervised and just breaking sprinklers and breaking tree limbs and just running amok, and I'm thinking, where are their parents? You know, we need to say something when you see that type of thing occurring. I did walk up to the children and said, where are your parents? You need to not do, I feel like I'm their parent, unfortunately. But, again, I don't want to see our parks being defaced or destroyed because that does cost all of us money. I'd also like to add that we should advertise the best we can. I believe our Discover is a great tool for that, and possibly our website. So I would like to add that, if possible, to the way that we get out to businesses, to the residents, because, I might even like to donate some money to some of the parks and just help out a little bit if I can, because I do appreciate them. And, I know, people don't voted down years ago. There was a park tax. Was it C? I'm trying to remember what that was. But when we lost some funding, probably about 12 years ago, 15 years ago, they were trying to adopt a program that it was an additional tax. I think it was C, ballot C or whatever it was, and the people voted no. So I voted yes. That's something that I would have supported as paying. So I think it's a great idea again, and I would support that in advertising and advertising to the residents as well, because, $20 here and $20 there, may just make a little bit of a difference. So thank you for bringing this forward.
Any other comments? If not, Fred, there's also, we've had Boy Scouts and Girl Scout trips also besides the Latter-day Saints, and many times before them. The Key Club, Interact clubs at the different schools have participated and helped out before. There's many different groups out there that participate in those programs, and we have West Covina Beautiful that encourages some of the different stuff. We have two of the people here, but we have a motion and a second. If there's no other comments, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? 5-0. Drop down to Mayor Pro Tem Sanderson. Request from Mayor Pro Tem Sanderson requesting that the City Council to instruct city staff to prepare a report on developing renewable energy projects in West Covina. Mayor Pro Tem Sanderson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I had brought this forward, getting ideas of how we can, I know the city's doing quite a bit, and I want to also take the opportunity to thank our staff for creating this, continuing this program, and just looking for ideas of the solar. I know that I believe we are looking into that. Was that correct, Mr. City Manager? Was it the police station, or maybe you could briefly talk about that?
We've been talking to prospective vendors on utilizing the parking structures and tops of buildings that the city owns, fire stations, to see what makes economic sense to convert over to solar in order to reduce our utility expenses.
Okay, wasn't there one too that they were talking about leasing, like certain people, there was organizations or companies that would put their solar and rent? I believe we were kind of looking into that as well.
Correct.
And maybe we just come back, it's up to the council, come back with some kind of a report and information and kind of.
We can give you an update on kind of what's going on.
Absolutely. Okay, thank you.
Is that it on that one? Any request to receive and file then?
I'll make a motion that, with that caveat, that we just keep on top of that, and if the council is supportive and other ideas, they can come back to us. I don't know, maybe Mr. Yahtzee could explain to, in things like that, would they come back to the city council for like approvals for leasing, kind of like how they do with the cell towers? I know that some, they'll come to you and say, okay, we want to give you rent for that. Have we been approached with anything?
Yes, as the city manager mentioned, probably over the last 5 or more years, we've entertained several different options, either purchasing the equipment, installing it, or, as was stated, some of the investor-owned companies would install their equipment, and it's more advantageous because they get tax breaks, but they share that savings with the city and help to lower your utility bills. And we're meeting with another vendor within a couple weeks. The prices on the solar are coming down, so I think we're going to be able to do it soon. I don't know if this is the good or the bad part, but part of the issue is that we've made all our buildings so energy efficient. It's hard to make the solar pay off because we're already paying low rates and we're already keeping our bills down. But there's going to be a time when the panels come down in price that it's going to pay off for us to do it at a facility.
Thank you.
Thank you. We also have the lowest solar project rates for permits in the state. I believe we charge $0 if you want to do a solar project.
That's correct.
Okay. Motion to receive and file. All those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed?
Mr.
Okay.
Mayor, on the next item, even though I don't believe I have a conflict of interest with Southern California Edison, my employer, I will abstain on the item. Actually, I'm going to recuse myself since it's the last item on the agenda, and therefore I will adjourn for tonight.
No problem. Thank you. We will start on it. Councilmember Sykes, once he clears the room. Talk outside. We can't start till you're done. Okay, this is a request from Councilmember Fred Sykes requesting the City Council to instruct city staff to prepare a report on Southern California Edison power outages. Mr. Councilmember Sykes.
Thank you, Mayor Tui. First of all, this is not an attack on any one individual, and it's not even an attack on Southern California Edison. It is simply to address something that is starting to happen more frequently and is quite concerning. On June 10th, there was a loss of electrical service for quite a number of residents, and that ended up that it was from 11 a.m. on Sunday morning, the 10th, and the power was not restored until, at least throughout the neighborhood, until about 10:35. That's roughly 23 and a half hours. Now, the other thing that happens when you get these unannounced power service loss, I think you realize that there is damage done to equipment, not to all, but some folks do sustain damage. And there's also the loss of communication and your security if you have a system that's attached to or at the mercy of the electrical service. And when these, I don't have a number of how many we've had recently, but we've had more than a few within the past year and a half. Now, we know that we've had the wind shears type situation, but more often than the wind situation, we've had the subterranean loss of service, where you have subterranean vaults and the infrastructure is completely underground except for the lights that you see. And I was hoping that we would have someone from Southern California Edison present today to simply answer some basic questions. And that would be what's going on with the infrastructure and what is causing the problems within the community. And of course, that also begs to ask, how do we solve the problem? And I was also hoping that the city staff would address the emergencies that come about. As a matter of fact, I think I see a representative from Southern California Edison.
Donna couldn't wait but to come down here.
So
let's go ahead and get, if you have any other questions, Fred, I think Mayor Pro Tem Sanderson wants to make some comments, and we can have our public affairs manager for the city of West Covina come forward.
Okay. So just to wrap up real quick, I I would also like to have our city staff address the locations for cooling, because you know when it's extremely hot, you have shut-ins, you have aged folks that you have 105-degree temperature. That's can be deadly to the young, very young, like infants, and to the elderly. And then there's also the matter that people beg to ask when it comes to compensation and rebates for food spoilage, and when now you have to go out and purchase a generator or some other item that's going to help you deal with interrupted service, such as uninterruptible power sources. Those things cost money. And so I had neighbors asking me about a rebate. So with that, I'll turn it over to Sanderson. Thank you.
Go ahead, Mayor Pro Tem Sanderson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just had a quick question. However, this is, definitely an issue that I think is important. And I know that years ago I'd met with Mr. Rick Mesa with Edison. He was always very, cordial, available to try and help with any questions that they had over the years. So, however, I just had a question for clarification, Mr. City Manager, City Attorney. This is a Mother May I item. I had an issue that before that was a Mother May I, but I decided since with this brief report that I'd just receive and file it and not ask you to come back with a report at this time. So I guess if we have Edison, I want to hear from Edison, but I don't know if that's the proper protocol at this time because it's a Mother May I item and the council has to vote. Maybe that's just a question for the city attorney. Because I guess I'm kind of wondering, maybe we need to meet with them, or...
I don't believe we're going to be debating the issue. She's just going to give a...
Well, I just want to make sure it's done
What I would suggest, since the representative from Edison is here, to listen to what they have to say, then you can either at that point refer it back to staff or receive and file or take whatever action you wish to do.
That makes sense. Very good. Thank you.
If I might add also, I'm not sure the rep is going to be able to answer the questions at this point in time. She may have to go back to other personnel within her, within Edison to gather some of these answers.
Right, and maybe we can then instruct staff to follow up with that item. Okay, great.
And we can have Donna come forward, but it's a problem we're going to continually have. I mean, we have like transformers every 5 or 6 houses, and I can tell you some of them haven't been replaced for years, and they're going to just by sheer age default. And you see all the problems we're having currently with the Tehachapi project, that people don't want some of those new lines near them as they're upgrading all the lines to strengthen our the lines coming into us. There's war in Chino Hills going, and those people show up in every city that Donna or any of her other friends show up because they don't want the Tehachapi poles, the new stronger poles that assure us reliability. No one wants them near their home. It's similar to everything we do these days, but I'm shocked we don't have Chino Hills people here today.
And Mr. Mayor, you might even want to remind them about what happened in San Diego.
Right, I was there in San Diego when whatever happened in Arizona, and I had to try to, for one, they said they weren't going to be able to provide any, food or lighting for all night, and I was on the 10th floor. So I had a choice, and I'm not built for speed or anything. I'm built more for comfort. I had to try to figure out how to get my luggage and myself, who I can, I have enough ankle problems, down 10 flights of stairs. And they were willing to give me a glow stick if I wanted to stay there for the night, but I said it's okay. But we did not hit, so you understand what happened then, we did not hit electricity until just past San Clemente, coming back home. There was no power, no gas, no signals, no lights anywhere in San Diego County. It was absolutely amazing driving in the dark, and not being able to get gas. So I lived through that. I know where they stayed, they had a barbecue going, that hotel, and giving out hamburgers. We did not. Go ahead, Donna.
What an experience.
It
right,
was.
Mike?
I lived through it.
Mr. Mayor, Madam Mayor Pro Tem, council members, Mr. City Manager, Mr. City Attorney, and city staff and audience. My name is Donna Lee, Region Manager for Southern California Edison. and I wanted to come tonight to follow up on a recent power outage that Councilmember Sykes had experienced. Power outages through Edison's system occur through many different means. It could be a storm, it could be a squirrel, it could be a tree. So unfortunately, power isn't guaranteed, but we want to make sure that you and your constituents are prepared to be able to handle the power outages. What Councilman Sykes had experienced was a power outage due to bad underground cable. And it occurred on Sunday, June 10th at about 11 o'clock in the morning. And in the investigation, once a customer calls into our system, and the number is 800-611-1911, automatically a trouble ticket is generated. And a troubleman goes out to investigate what that cause might be. So normally what happens is a circuit will lock out. And that could include 1,000 customers, but as soon as the troubleman goes out, he determines what the cause is, and he starts what we call isolating that outage. So from the 1,000 people, right away, it'll start closing down that outage to the problem area. And that's what happened. They determined it was bad underground cable, and unfortunately it affected, I believe, 13 transformers, which were underground. There are a number that had water in the vault. So that took some time, where we had to request a different type of crew that handles the hazardous materials in the water possibly, and pump that water out. So we apologize for that, Councilman Sykes. Councilman was so kind to meet with us last Friday. I had my district manager out, and we reviewed the structures that were out there, as well as went and walked around the entire area that was out. But I want to share with you the brochure that we have for customers. It's basically preparing for electrical outages. One of the main things is, and what we learned through the windstorm actually in November 30th, 1911, and December 1st and 2nd, was that customers did not realize they needed to call in. And so even though a whole block of customers may have not had electricity, they thought, oh, my neighbor called in or somebody else called in. But it's very important that anytime you lose power, that you do call that 800 number. Again, that's 1-800-611-1911. So I would recommend that everyone put it in your cell phones just in case, because a lot of times when the power goes off, your landline doesn't work because that's generated off of electricity. So that's one helpful hint. Another helpful hint would be right now on our website, while you have power, you can look at the outage center. And that outage center has helpful tips on not only emergency outages, but on planned outages, because we're in an area where we have aging infrastructure. You know, our communities were built up 40, 50 years ago. And so we have densely populated areas. Our equipment is, 40, 50 years old. So as we go through our daily routines of maintenance and changing out equipment, could be transformers, could be switches for underground vaults, could be cross arms, deteriorated poles. We have extensive inspection programs, both overhead facilities as well as underground facilities, where our folks go out and review, and then they determine pretty much deadline dates when that equipment can be changed out. And then our crews go out and change them, as well as our contract crews. So I'll share these with you, and I'll bring some to Community Services Department for them. I know one concern that the councilman had was on critical care customers. And what I was able to find out is that we do have something what we call medical baseline. And that includes not just critical care customers, but any customers that may be what's the word for it? Required and need medical services. So customers are required, who do require medical equipment, to call Edison so that we have information on them, but they also are on what we call the medical baseline rate. So that's another option for them.
And
that would be
I believe
helpful.
also our police and fire are dispatched. You should phone in if you are one of those people, so we have that within our computer system. When there is a problem, we know. But you need to phone in and make us aware that you are of that.
That's a good suggestion. So also fire and police departments need that information. We also are adding to our infrastructure. And so in the area that Councilman Sykes lives, we are putting in a new circuit for what we call our main line. So our system is almost like a heart, where the city is almost like a heart. And then we have arteries and veins. And so the main line will go along Shadow Oak and I think Moongate. But that's really just the main line. And then from the main line, we have veins or circuits. And that usually feeds into the little tracks that we have. And those include the transformers. So that's the area that went down a couple of Sundays ago. But we are putting in a main line. And what we would like is that when that does happen, right now it's through the planning stage. And so in 2013, we'll be completing the planning stage and going into construction. So we can partner with the city and look at the route, and then also talk about permitting, as well as if there's any easements. One of the biggest challenge in our infrastructure build are easements, when sometimes some of the line has to be either built onto someone's property or through someone's property, and that's usually where our challenge is. And also street restoration. So we'll look at that. I know I've worked with Shannon on a number of different projects as far as trying to pre-plan and coordinate our projects so that we don't cut into newly paved streets. But I think that's about it. Like I said, I hope everyone will write down the 800 number and also look at our website. I know City of West Covina has a great website, and if it isn't already, I would say maybe we could link up some of that information from Edison's website at sce.com and include that on the city's website. But thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity. I also want to add one thing. I'm in the city's CERT program, and I just wanted to say that Fire Captain Jim Rudolph is doing a great job. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Donna. Yes, Andy.
Speaking of fire department, I wanted to let you know we'll respond to council with the questions if you move forward with this irrespective, but we do have an electrical contingency plan that does address locations in the city that have generators and people that have already called in that have them on the list for dispatch as well, as you were touching on. And so we'll share that with the council and the community.
No problem. And also, Fred mentioned cooling stations. We still have to figure out if you are a shut-in, you probably don't have any ability to get to the cooling station. And then if you get there, you need some way when the thing is done to get back. So, I mean, there's other things we need to consider. So, no problem. If there's any other questions, receive and file, or what do you want to do, Fred?
Definitely want to extend a large thank you to Donna Lee. She responded to my calls, and she was very helpful with answering some of the questions that I had on the spot, and I definitely appreciate what she does tonight. I mean, it's 9:30 at night, so thank you very much. And to the city, I'm hoping that we can do some other things as regards to, I think we have electrical vehicles. Okay, so perhaps we might want to look into broadening our hybrid stock to include maybe natural gas vehicles, just so that we're not strapped to one basket, so to speak. And with that, thank you.
Thank you very much, Fred. So is that a motion to receive and file this right now until further notice?
Yes.
Okay, we have a motion. We have a second. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? It passes 4-0. We drop down to City Council comments. Is there any comments? And I forgot any AB 1234 conference and meeting reports.
A quick comment.
Go
It
ahead.
was on an item
Mayor Pro Tem
earlier.
Sanderson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. East San Gabriel Valley, when they were talking about the homeless, do you know anything about that organization, or if they have any help in reference to that?
Do you have anything to want to add to that first before I jump in? I believe they have a roster of what available services are out there, directory, and sometimes they work with local churches, sometimes they work with the Salvation Army in terms of sheltering of families and individuals. Depends during the cold season, they set up shelters as well. I think it might be best if I can get you probably their index and directory. That might help shed some light on that.
All right, and I know we're really, have a lot of items to handle, and I don't want to put any more on your plate. However, I would like to, because I know I'd gone on ride-alongs years ago, and when you run across somebody with issues, the police always had like different cards to hand people to help them, find housing or whatever their need was. And I haven't been updated on that, and I'm not really familiar. I don't know if you could just do that in a weekly to me, or maybe just a quick conversation. But the East San Gabriel Valley, I would like to see if there's any programs, or maybe we could put these type of things in our Discover. Again, trying to reach out to the residents to say, hey, these are the services throughout the community. I don't know if I need to do that as a Mother May I item, or I just want to kind of handle those issues without being too demanding upon the staff.
Well, the simplest thing, I guess, would be for us to just get a report to the whole council and let you know what's out there, and then we'll see what we can link into the web.
Thank you. Well, some of them you're not going to be able to get a contact through them for the most part through the web or by the Discover. You're going to have to use our resource centers that we have, and because they don't have those type of, they don't really get their mail like that. Also, we do have a cold winter shelter. St. Chris Church, St. Christopher Catholic Church is one of the cold winter shelters. Different churches in each city rotated amongst the San Gabriel Valley, and Father Obong Nestor started that when he came over to St. Christopher Church, Catholic Church. So there's no other comments. Council comes first. I'm sorry. Councilmember Sykes, and Chris Freeland has to wait.
Thank you. Back to the infrastructure situation with Southern California Edison. I understand that we need to prepare for some planned outages because they are, I know we had one, I believe, last Friday night. It was a planned outage in the area of Amar Road and Nogales to repair some problems. So start getting your things in order that there will be repairs. So, thank you.
Thank you very much, Fred. Mayor Pro Tem Sanderson, then we get Freeland. Sorry,
Thank you,
Chris,
Mr. Mayor.
you will wait.
I just want to make a clarification in reference to the Discover. What I was saying is it would be nice to have in the Discover for the residents when they get it, what those options are, so if they do need to help somebody, direct them, as I think
that's what I meant when my response was.
Yeah, and that's what I was kind of going with as well. And thank you. Okay.
No problem. Now, Chris Freeland.
I was just going to add to the comments with regards to the homeless shelters. We do utilize services from multiple homeless shelters and organizations, and so the community and the city does partner with those groups. So we do provide caseworking to help folks maybe that may need medical, psychological assistance as well, and not just shelters, because there is a need for a variety of services. So we are reaching out to them and working as best as we can with them.
But they come with other issues too sometimes when you speak to the business community. The one service center we had over there, they bring them over to the Carl's Jr. area, give them a sack lunch, and then they go inside Carl's Jr. and fill up all the tables, which makes it so people don't want to go inside there and eat. It's full of 40 or 50 homeless people, and I'm not knocking them, but I'm just saying there are, no matter what you try to do, you try to feed them, then they go, and there's other things, but they pick them up. They get paid to pick them up. and they drop them off at that intersection right there. And that has caused problems before for the businesses in that area having to deal with the service center that was upstairs in Jose Gutierrez's building. No problem. If there's no other comments, there's no AB 1234 report, no other council member comments. We have adjournments. Tonight I would like to adjourn our meeting in memory of Alejandro Romero, brother of longtime resident Ricardo and Yolanda Romero. Our thoughts and prayers are with the Romero family. If I can have a motion. And a second?
Second.
Motion moved and second. All those in favor say aye. 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 We're adjourned. Thank you very much.